It's Monday, January 23rd, and this is now on HNN.
Say yes to new ideas, solutions, and to putting our values into action. Say yes to achieving goals.
Governor Josh Green delivers his first State of the State address, a recap of his priorities coming up.
And in developing news out of California, the death toll from the latest mass shooting during a Lunar New Year celebration rises to 11. The newest details coming up.
Hawaii bids aloha to the last ali'i, somber scenes from the funeral of Abigail Kawananakoa.
And the famed Eddie was a go. We've got a recap and a look at some dramatic video from that high surf. Those stories and more coming up on This Is Now.
Aloha, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Dylan Ancheta alongside our Jonathan Soppy in the HNN Digital Center. Governor Josh Green just wrapped up his first State of the State address, and Jonathan, you were listening to it all.
Yeah, listening to it all, and we're going to get a lot more insight about it coming up in just a moment from a press conference that is going to take place live here in this half hour. But let's recap what was said in the speech itself. Governor Green, like Dylan just mentioned, first State of the State address, inaugural address, really laid out his plans for the next year. A lot of talk about affordable housing, a lot of talk about homelessness, and also changing the aspects of Hawaii's economy, specifically the tourism economy. Wanted to talk about this first. He talked about giving citizens a tax break, and that's what's really important to everyone here at home listening right now. I have some sound queued up for us, Dylan, regarding Josh Green and his plans for tax relief. Here's what he had to say.
We do this by being bold. We'll have to move beyond an economy of pure tourism, and we have to become energy independent, as you all know. We fulfill this potential as an economic, renewable energy leader in the Pacific. We've already, in the first 49 days, been doing something. We've been working with partners across the globe, Japan, local businesses, and key sectors from Hawaii's economy.
That was Governor talking about tourism there, but I did want to mention the tax break. He talked about how he's going to bring relief for the residents of Hawaii. Let's play out that soundbite for us.
Universal tax relief, and let me break it out for you. We shift the tax bracket slightly to ensure that working families aren't burned by inflation. More than double the standard deduction from $2,200 to $5,000. We double the personal exemption from $1,144 to $2,288. Now, it may sound complicated, but it's not.
Tax plan there, Governor Green. Again, we're waiting for that press conference to start here pretty momentarily, but I'll break down a little bit more what he had to say about just those tax breaks. Green says he unveiled a plan to lower taxes for working families, shifting tax brackets, and doubling the standard deduction to $5,000 and the personal exemption to $2,288. So in the speech today, he also did something very unusual for a governor who gives these addresses. He signed an emergency proclamation regarding homelessness. And on our special coverage today, we had Colin Moore talking about that, really breaking down exactly what that emergency proclamation was all about. Here's what he had to say.
My understanding is that this is mainly focused on removing all of the red tape. We know it is so hard to construct housing in Hawaii because there are so many regulatory burdens. And my understanding of this proclamation, it's going to remove most of those. Now, I think that's going to be popular. It should reduce the cost of housing. But once people see the details, there may be some pushback from the environmental community and even homeowners who don't want to see, for example, multifamily units developed in their neighborhoods. So it's one of these things that sounds good initially, but there may be a little more political pushback once people see the details.
Colin Moore, HNN political analyst there. Again, talking about that emergency proclamation that was signed regarding lowering the cost of living here in Hawaii, specifically dealing with homelessness as well. We're waiting to get the exact verbiage of that proclamation. That's why we have a team of reporters there at the Capitol and working behind the scenes right now. We're going to write all that up for you on your H&N digital platforms as well. And I can see in our live preview here in the H&N Digital Center, we are almost in place now for this post-State of the State press conference. We're just waiting for the governor to get there. You can only imagine the number of people waiting to greet him after that State of the State address. Of course, this being Governor Green's first one. He said this is his 49th day in office, so just under 50 days. He said something like about 1,000 hours, work hours so far. Really, these speeches are all about laying out what you have done as governor so far and what you're planning ahead. So now here comes the interesting part, because when you give a speech, guess what you don't have there? A bunch of reporters asking you questions, and a lot of people, specifically with those tax breaks and about the economy. How are you going to make those changes? How are you going to afford to give everyone a tax break? How does that work? He's going to hit a lot of questions asked to him here in just a moment as this press conference is about to get underway. But recapping, going back to that first soundbite, what we call them here in the news, that we were just talking about first regarding the economy. I wanted to cue that up, Dylan, if we could play that out again for our viewers, talking about the Indo-Pacific specifically and how the governor's trying to reach out to that sector.
We do this by being bold. We'll have to move beyond an economy of pure tourism, and we have to become energy independent, as you all know. We fulfill this potential as an economic, renewable energy leader in the Pacific. We've already, in the first 49 days, been doing something. We've been working with partners across the globe, Japan, local businesses, and key sectors from Hawaii's economy, like the international wedding industry, which also brings in 20% of all the visitors from Japan. We're working with them to change the way we view our traditional economy. And welcoming more visitors like our Japanese neighbors means we can generate much more revenue for local businesses while taking in fewer tourists overall. That's tourism management.
Green's been talking a lot about tourism and the changes he'd wanted to make to that industry, specifically how they collect revenue from that industry, especially with talks of fees and changes in those fees as well. I'm seeing them getting ready right now.
This is, again, the live press conference that is just about to take place. Governor Josh Green is just taking the podium. Let's listen into what he has to say.
Here. Just a couple quick comments. Our speech was entitled Action Rooted in Values. I hope that everyone saw that those proposals that we're making for the state of Hawaii are rooted in our values, which is to say supporting families and their ability to afford to stay in the state, to actually structure tax breaks for our ohana, to make sure Alice families, which we've talked about so often, have meaningful tax reform and they get more money to survive here. In addition to that, the most impactful way we can help people to afford to stay and live in Hawaii is to make sure housing actually gets built, or that people get places to rent and get subsidies for that, so that once again we take off that largest pressure, which leads people to struggle from paycheck to paycheck. And you will see constantly that I reminded our team, as we expressed what we believe here right out of the gate, that we need to help families with affordability and we need to help the state with housing. There are a lot of things I mentioned. I wanted to have a comprehensive set of comments in this first State of the State. So that's why I kind of gave an expansive set of projects and priorities. There are many other priorities which didn't even make it into the State of the State, you can imagine, but we will be working full tilt for our people. So I'll just pause there and it's all yours.
We'll go with Paul Drews from KITV4. One question per news outlet directed at the governor.
Governor, I want to talk about the emergency proclamation.
Yes.
It suspends a number of things in order to speed up the construction process or housing process, but things like bids, land use commission, I'm looking over suspending wages for workers, environmental rights. So are you saying that housing is more important than all of those other things at this point?
Let me be very specific. This is for homelessness and for just small villages, specifically like the Kauhale we built. There will be action likely on housing in general, the housing emergency proclamation in February sometime. This is just for homelessness and for Kauhale. It is exactly what we did before, which is to, in areas where we already have land toward the urban infill especially, that we can do these tiny homes quickly. And we don't intend to, in any way, shape, or form, damage our environment or our trust with any community. But to build Kauhale, which is usually $6,000 or $8,000 tiny homes, quickly, right in place, usually on a platform or on a very solid foundation, it's so easy. The alternative is terrible impact on society because people end up having to live on the streets, having enormous amounts of struggles in the streets, on the curbs, in the parks, difficult to maintain dignified living. And so you will see a lot less impact on the environment, less impact on people. And when we built Kauhale, what we see is people's lives are restored and the harm reduction is immense, but their cost to themselves and society drops precipitously, more than 70%. Those monies can then be invested in, well, you name it, but probably tax breaks for people that are Alice families.
Our next question, go ahead.
Sorry, it just doesn't say anything about the Kauhales in the emergency proclamation.
It's meant to be fully for homelessness. This is our homeless emergency proclamation, followed by what will be the larger housing. So just to be clear.
Just following up on what Paul asked about the emergency proclamation. So the next one, is it going to be more expansive than what than what's laid out here in regards to the laws that are suspended, or is it going to sort of take the same scope?
It'll meant to be more focused. It'll be focused on large developments, the creation of single-family houses, condominiums, the bigger projects that will be in the affordable housing range. That's where we'll go for the likely emergency proclamation on housing. Again, our hope and approach will be to work with our colleagues in the legislature, and I really appreciated what they said today and on opening day, to have them pass legislation to give us a window of opportunity to build the housing, especially over the next 5 years, that we need. I would rather see it in statute, but they have to work through a lot of different challenges in the legislature in a very short period of time. So I want to empower our administration, once again, to build housing where people would expect it, but getting rid of some of the delays like we have with permitting, some of the delays that we have with transferring lands. And we, with these emergency rules, can build infrastructure in areas that we already have the land. There will be no surprises. The real desire is to build it along TOD, to build housing in areas that we've long planned it, but it's stalled.
Lace, do you have a question of your own? Okay, we'll go ahead with Audrey from Associated Press.
Governor, I wanted to ask about your tax relief proposals. I think in your speech you mentioned that there would be tax breaks for every income bracket. How could you explain the philosophy behind that?
Yes. So, in fact, I can do it with these charts. Are they both right here? All right. So this is going to be great because they would have preferred I not bring charts out. So, okay. So right now, this is where our tax structure is, and for people like below $41,000, this is at or around federal poverty. We have some tax breaks here with the earned income tax credit, low-income renters, and food and excise tax breaks. But you see very little tax breaks between $41,000 and $109,000. That's why people are struggling. Their Alice families, they don't get much money back to pay their rent, pay their mortgage, pay for food. So, flash forward to our proposal. Calling this GAP, the Green Affordability Plan, and special thanks to our team of economic advisors, budget and finance leadership, our young guys. This is now where we'd like to go. So the price of this is $312,700,000 if we do all this, which we should. There are some additional benefits to everyone. And in Hawaii, as we know, two earners making $60,000 a year, say two school teachers 3 years in, they're in a relationship, they are living in their home, they're at $120,000 and they are in the Alice category, especially if they have kids. They may pay enough in taxes, rent, and food to not have any savings. And therefore, one bad moment, they're in trouble. So by doing what we did, by doubling the personal exemption, you see that that helps everybody, even people that are making more money. The reason this is good, and most of it is focused here, the reason this is good is because every single dollar you see here goes right back into the economy. every single dollar. And historically, as you know, when we have surpluses, we often will write a check. Sometimes it's a superficial symbolic check for $1 to everybody, which is particularly stupid. But sometimes it's $100 or $300, which might make a small difference. This will make a continuous difference for our families that have committed their lives here. So every family will see at least $2,000 extra. Some will see $8,000 or $10,000 extra, especially if they have their kids in preschool or they have, say, parents in adult daycare. All of this money comes back into the economy. A couple people will still see some additional benefits, but even these individuals may very well be just still somewhere near savings month to month, as amazing as that sounds. I'm most worried about people that are in the Alice family category. These folks are in such deep trouble, we have to do everything for them. You can do follow-up if you want.
Audrey, you have a follow-up.
Thanks. So the top income bracket, though, well, so both House Speaker Psyche and President Koji were saying that they prefer to see targeted tax relief. But here, even the top income tax bracket would get some relief.
Yeah, I agree. Look, we do have to keep things manageable and simple. And so some of this, from a practical standpoint, is meant to be streamlined and targeted and matched with the federal tax code. So a lot of matching with the federal tax code ends up meaning that some money will go back to some higher earners. Also keep in mind, families like that probably have 2 generations living in their household and are taking care of them, and that's why if they have tax credits, say for elder care or child care, they end up in a place where they can benefit. But almost all of the tax breaks are in Alice families, which is from $41,000 to $129,000, heavily weighted at the front end. Yeah. And let me say this also, I completely am in agreement with the Speaker and Senate President that any tax breaks and directed tax credits we can make to people in the Alice category, we will sign on to 1,000%, okay? The more targeted, the better. If I may, one of the reasons we favor this tax plan over other tax plans, which I still like getting rid of some of the taxes on food and medicine, those are not targeted at all. They're very regressive, but 30% of the general excise tax on food and medicine does go to people who travel here, and I want them to be paying fees and taxes, as you know. So this is already a much more targeted plan to those in need.
All right, Josh Green there holding that press conference. It's post-State of the State press conference. We're going to continue to monitor that right up, any developments that come out of it. We also have the whole speech published already online, but again, our team of reporters are there asking the tough questions about the speech and what Governor Green's plans are and how he specifically plans to accomplish them. But we got to get to some other developing news right now. Breaking news, the death toll has risen to 11 out of that California mass shooting. We're going to get the very latest regarding that from KCAL's Kara Finsturm. She's in Monterey Park.
This community is grieving as investigators work to understand what led up to the horrific mass shooting inside of this dance studio. They are piecing together evidence and witness statements. Hattie Pong was at the Lunar New Year celebration when the shots rang out.
Heard the boom, 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 boom. You will see the body already, several lying there.
Just outside the ballroom, community members have been leaving flowers to remember the victims. Investigators identified the killer as 72-year-old Hu Can Tran. They would not confirm reports he may have been looking for his wife. CNN reports his ex-wife told them he used to be an informal dance instructor at Star Dance. Shortly after the shooting, detectives say he also went to a second dance studio in Alhambra and pulled out a gun, but it was wrestled away. At that point, investigators say Hu Can Tran took off in a white van that law enforcement tracked down in Torrance and shot and killed himself. Evidence, including a gun, was found inside. The LA Times reports law enforcement sources told him he had recently shown up at the Hemet police station saying that family members were trying to poison him. Folks coming here to remember the victims say the investigation is prompting needed discussion.
People need to talk about it. I think mental health stuff is so real and so difficult in the Asian American community, Chinese community in particular, to get there.
Also overnight, sources told KCAL News law enforcement searched a home in Hemet in connection with the shootings, and property records show that Hu Can Tran purchased the property in the mobile home community back in 2013. And we are waiting to learn more about the findings from investigators. Cara Finstrom, KCAL News.
All right, want to take you live right now, happening now. We're taking you downtown Iolani Palace is what we're looking at in this live stream picture coming into the H&N Digital Center. You know, yesterday more than 1,600 people waited for hours to pay their respects to the late Hawaiian heiress Abigail Kauananakoa, who is lying in state there. We also have a reporter there. We're going to have much more on this story as well on later editions of H&N. But for now, we got to get the latest on that high surf and your first alert to that. Here's Guy Hoggy.
Let's bring in our Guy Hoggy now. He was there at the Eddie. Guy, how was it?
You know, Dylan, it was a historic day. It really turned out to be the best of the best in terms of the talent, in terms of the weather, in terms of the waves. Actually, the waves exceeded what the forecasters were expecting. It got bigger, and it stayed consistent throughout the day. Now, 2016 was the last time the contest was held, and that was considered to be maybe the best contest ever. This one might have exceeded that because it was consistent all day long, kept on growing bigger, and the conditions were good. And of course, the talent was top notch.
Yeah, speaking about that talent, what can you tell us about the winner?
Not much, except that he's a city and county lifeguard, underground charger is one of the ways to describe him. He wasn't well known to the major surf world, but of course all the big wave surfers, all the Waimea Bay crew know Luke very well, Luke Shepherdson. And what's really humbling about Luke is he was on duty, right? He took time off to surf in between shifts, and then he had to, after he won the contest, he had to go back and make sure everybody was safe, finish up his shift. So it's really nice that somebody like that came to win it. It's kind of in the spirit of the Eddie I call legacy, because Eddie himself was the first lifeguard at Waimea Bay.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's kind of mind-blowing to know that he was working in between heats, so great job for him on winning this. I also want to ask you about some of the conditions we saw on shore.
Yeah.
The social media videos of people getting washed up. Talk about how dangerous that was. Any serious injuries that you saw?
I didn't see any serious injuries from the waves rushing people up, but I can tell you what. Lots of debris out there. Many people lost their cell phones, no doubt. They were bruised up. They were cut up from those waves coming up. And they had warning. But the problem is that when you get 50,000 people in a confined space, hard for them to move around. So even though the lifeguards told them to back up, hard to back up when you got, 500 people behind you and they're not moving, right? And everybody wants to be in front. They want to see the action live. They want that ticket, right? They want to be close up to the action. But they have to pay a price because they got hit by those waves. They got sent into the barriers. They got sent into the bushes. They lost their cell phones. The beach chairs were washing up and hitting them. So it was a rough situation out there. But the lifeguards did the best they could. And again, we didn't lose anybody yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, and thank you for that update. But I do want to make one correction, because earlier I said this was Iolani Palace. I misspoke. Of course, those tributes took place over the weekend at Iolani Palace. This is at New Uano at the Royal Mausoleum. I just wanted to clear up that confusion that I made. And you're looking at that live picture of the remembrance and the private funeral for the late Abigail Kauananakoa, and we'll have more on that coming up on later editions of H&N. More on so many developing stories, as you just saw. A complete recap of the state of the dress will be up on later editions of H&N on your H&N digital platforms as well. Also, still ahead in your afternoon coverage here on This Is Now, we'll of course have the very latest on the mass shooting that happened in California. There's also another shooting incidents that is unfolding in breaking news right now, and we're getting that out of the Midwest. We'll have more on that coming up.
Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day.